Welcome to the 76 Capital Leadership Series. I'm your host, Wayne Kimmel, and also managing partner of 76 Capital. You can follow me at Wayne at 76 Capital. That's my email address. But you can always follow me at Wayne Kimmel all over the internet, at Wayne Kimmel, whether that's on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. We want to hear from you. We want to talk with you about all the great things that we do in and around the world of sports and hear the great things that you're doing. We are all about talking with leaders on our leadership series, the entrepreneurs, the executives, the athletes that are doing the next thing in sports. And my producer, James Santor, who can be followed at, you can find James at James Santor all over the internet. He's our producer. He's our chief of staff. He's really someone who helps me put these shows together and do some great things. You know, today our guest is Howard Wright. Howard is the CEO of C360, and you're going to hear about his whole story, all the things that he's done in his life, his journey of being a student athlete at Stanford, his 10-year professional career in playing basketball. He was in the NBA and played with a number of teams as well. 14 years at Qualcomm. He also was at Intel and now at C360, which is a new 76 Capital portfolio company. And Howard can be found on the internet. His Twitter handle is HGW1967 on Twitter. Please follow him. Please check out all the great things that are going on C360 as well. So we're really excited to bring Howard onto our show. This is something that we're super excited about this because, as we said earlier, we're all about at 76 Capital finding the entrepreneurs that are doing the next things, the people that are truly pushing the limits, the ones that are doing the next thing in the sports tech world, in the esports world, in the sports betting world. And we're going to hear all the things that Howard has done and is going to be doing at C360. And we're super excited about that. You can also follow 76 Capital at 76 Capital at LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and also subscribe to our podcast, which is reaching all over the world right now through Spotify, Anchor, and Apple. And we're super excited of the things that are all happening there. So with no further ado, let's bring on Howard Wright, the new CEO of C360. Howard, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Wayne. Really appreciate you having me.
This is really great, and it's an honor to have you. And I'm so excited about, now the fact that we're both at the same time joining C360. At the same time, you come in as CEO and us at 76 Capital coming in as investors. It's going to be really an exciting journey for both of us.
It is, and it really is a culmination of all the experiences that I've had in my life that have led me to this moment, to this time, to this opportunity. I could not be more excited, and I could not be more humbled at the opportunity that we have in front of us.
Well, I can't wait to get into that. And as Howard, as we do on all of our 76 Capital Leadership Series podcasts, we love to really get into and learn about, our guest and hear, the full background of all the things that you've done. And I know there's some incredible things that you've done in your career, both on the court as well as in the business world and in the community, and to really try to make this world a better place. And that's something that we're all about at 76 Capital. So I'd love to hear your story. I think there's some really interesting things that many of us will be interested in hearing about from, just growing up and your background of your dad and your grandfather. And there's some really great stories that I'm sure you can share with us.
Sure. I'm the luckiest guy that you'll ever meet, or that's the short story. The longer version is I'm a child of privilege. I'm a child of the sacrifices of the ancestors that came before me. My father, Ernie Wright, played 13 years for the Chargers and the Bengals after a Hall of Fame career in Ohio State. So he was part of this, basically the migration from the Midwest out to the West Coast. We got there in 1960. I wasn't born until 67, so I'm the youngest of the family. But Wayne, what it represents is really this Midwest, old school, tough love. When my father touched us sometimes, he left a mark. But I had no doubt in my mind that he loved us dearly in the way that he can, or the way that he could. And he wanted a bigger, better opportunity for us than he had been given, or my grandfather had been given, coming up in the Midwest. So we were when Pops was his last year with the Chargers, he was the 4th highest paid lineman in football. And so we moved from one part of San Diego to a more affluent part of San Diego. And basically, Wayne, what that allowed is that we were the first Black family for miles and miles. So the assimilation, the how to culturalize ourselves in this new world, we leaned on each other quite a bit. And then we were unapologetically bold in our athletics and academics. I am the youngest of the 4. My oldest sister, Cheryl, is a doctor. My other sister, Laura, is a CPA. My older brother, Ernie, is a CPA. So I'm the least successful. I'm the least accomplished. All of them have graduate degrees. Most of my nieces and nephews, including my daughter, have graduate degrees. The family was formed out of basically the focus on education that you see from my mother there. She never cared about how many points, how many rebounds, how many touchdowns we scored. She cared about our GPA, our citizenship, our SAT scores. Were we preparing ourselves to represent the right name in the community when we left her house? And that's the culmination of my father and grandfather and all the Wrights men get the accolades for their athletic prowess. But the little secret, Wayne, it is the Wright women, including my wife, including my daughters, who are the superstars of this family and this legacy.
Wow, that's amazing. That's really amazing to hear. There's a great picture on the screen of you and your family there. That's awesome. That's awesome. I tell you, this is one of the things that, this is what's so exciting about what we do at 76 Capital, and especially on our Leadership Series show, is to get to hear these great stories. Your grandfather, your father, they were both very good football players, but you played in the NBA and played professionally overseas. So how did you go from, how did you not end up being a football player and being a basketball player?
Sure. So quick story. That's my grandfather, Floyd Wright. In 1939, he was probably in top 10 high school players in the country. They went from their high school championship in Ohio and played at the national championship game in Florida. In 1939, there were going to be no African Americans playing against other Caucasian kids. So he had to sit outside the stadium on top of the bus and watch his team play. He was denied his opportunity. He spoke about it when we were kids, and I didn't understand then like I do now. And so what happened was, he didn't get a chance to go to college. There was no legitimate professional leagues in those days. He came back to Toledo, Ohio, got a couple different jobs, and started his family, including my father being the second born. My father walks in. My father told the story a lot better than I'm going to tell it right now, I promise. My father walks in from freshman football practice in 1955 and says, "Hey, Pops, I made the freshman team." My grandfather said, "What is a freshman team and why aren't you on varsity?" So I've never played football before. He said, "Okay, let's go out in the backyard. I will teach you how to play football." Now, Wayne, this is leather helmets and no face mask. My grandmother would sit in the kitchen and look through the bay windows of this grown man, after having worked 2 jobs in his work clothes, and this self-professed, fat kid who was my father at the time, 13, 14 years old, that didn't know anything about football. So they went out there every single day for a couple of years. And my grandfather would say, "Get in a stance, come off the line." And my grandfather would annihilate my father every single day. He would have blood coming from his nose. He would have, mud on his face, and he never quit. So that's another thing about us Wrights, that we're stubborn to a fault, in that my father became Ernie Wright by refusing to accept anything but his own excellence. He stuck his fingers in that mud in the backyard of 1010 Prospect in Toledo, Ohio, and he changed the course and the trajectory of every single Wright that came after him. Now, my grandfather, who was denied his opportunity, infused, he funneled, he channeled that rage and that ability into his son, who became all-world, top 50 charger of all time. And whenever I get tired, whenever I get down, whenever I even have just a hint of self-doubt, when I at least try to dig into that deep reservoir of those who came before me, who were allowed me to stand on their shoulders. And so now my father's children, all of us, world-class educations and graduate degrees and families, but I'm taken and reminded that none of that happens unless my father becomes Ernie Wright in the backyard of 1010 Prospect in Toledo, Ohio.
Wow. Such a powerful story, Howard. And now it sort of starts to put together the pieces of your career and all the amazing things that you've done. And, it's one of the things that I think that we talk a lot about on our 76 Capital Leadership Series, about what it takes to be successful, what it takes to be a leader. And when we talk about the overall persistence and drive and desire and being able to just get up after getting knocked down, these are the things that all great entrepreneurs, business people, athletes share, those kinds of traits. And it's something that, as you just described, your dad, right, in the backyard with your grandfather, right? I mean, and how it all started, and those are things that definitely we've seen from all the different really successful people like you that we've had on our leadership series, have very, very similar stories like that.
Yeah. So he remained absolutely focused with us on our accomplishments. He was not a "I love you, I'm proud of you" a lot person. He had a bigger vision, a higher purpose for us. He didn't necessarily care if we were friends. He wanted us to be, be respected individuals in the community, and to strive to do something more than we maybe could do just in our own little bubble. So to your earlier question, my older brother, who was the namesake, Ernie Wright II, was an all-world high school tight end and linebacker. He made All-State on offense and All-State on defense, and was recruited by every major football program in the country. He chose Kansas University, and he went there, and he had 5 surgeries in 4 years, and then said, "Okay, I had enough of this. I'm going to go to law school." And so, as that was happening, his getting hurt is basically why I leaned away from football and really found my love in basketball. And I'll tell you a quick story, Wayne. I'm a ball boy for the old San Diego Clippers. I'm 11 years old or so. And one February game, it's 55 degrees outside in San Diego, and we see the Philadelphia 76ers and Julius Erving and that whole crew come in, and Julius Erving is wearing a mink coat. I'd never seen a mink coat in my life because I'd never really gone too many places. It's 55 degrees. It's not, negative 55. And the aura, the imagery, he was at the height of his powers in 78, 79, 80. And I remember that he did take a few minutes to sit with me, just like he did with the other ball boys. And then I got a pair of shoes and we got an autograph. And I remember that night I went right before bedtime, hit my knees and prayed that, Lord, I just want to do that one time. I want to get into an NBA game. I want to pull off my sweats. I want to make a basket. I want to foul a guy. I want to get a rebound. He was the apex and a hero of mine in my sport. And I have his assigned a picture with him over here. So that's what I immediately fell in love with basketball in a way that I never did with football. And my father basically made me a deal when I was 12 or 13, as I kept getting, I was a head taller than everybody else. Said, if you do these things, I will pay for everything until you get to your scholarship. And so I never had a day job after that. I had done some, I was a paper boy early, but I'd like to think that my father recognized that I had some talent and he cultivated it. He nurtured it. He, fuss when he needed to fuss at me, but he made sure that I was focused on the right track of pursuit of a world-class education.
Well, and you certainly did that after high school, going on to Stanford. And what was that experience? I mean, being at Stanford, playing basketball. At this point, were you? How tall were you at this point when you went to got to Stanford?
So I was 6'8", 220 pounds. I'm a few pounds over that 220-pound weight right now from 30-something years ago, Wayne. Naive, eyes wide open as I went. Oh, she really pulled from the archives on this one. Even had some hair back then, Wayne. But the idea is, I knew I could compete athletically in then what was the Pac-10, because I knew I could just work hard enough, and things athletically had always come pretty easily to us. I was more worried about competing academically with the best and the brightest. And I realized very early on that if I stayed on top of my work, if I was diligent, if I calendared the day right, if I planned my time out right, that I could do fine. But it was pretty intimidating. And then it still stokes this intellectual curiosity that I have, because you're challenged at Stanford University in a way that you're not challenged other places. That's not to be pompous. That's not to be elitist. It's the conversations are, I think, more of a 360 conversation in terms of not just letting you be comfortable with your own biases, to be challenged intellectually and to be either able to articulate and enunciate your views and defend them, or you will get embarrassed in class, just like you could get embarrassed on the court.
Well, Howard, I mean, you didn't sort of take the easy route at Stanford. You were a qualitative economics major. I'm sure your mom was extremely proud of that.
The part of it was I went in as a wannabe engineer. So I was going to do industrial engineering because one of my heroes, James Lofton, was, everybody knows who James Lofton is, but he was industrial engineering at Stanford. Sophomore year of winter quarter was during the season. I loaded up, Wayne. I had Calc 44. I had statistics 501. I had another pretty heavy duty engineering focused curriculum. and I could not get to the labs in the afternoon because of basketball practice. So I got my behind handed to me that winter quarter. It just so happens that my father came up, after the report card had gone home, and he gave me one of the most ridiculous verbal undressings ever. He put his finger directly into my chest and reminded me that I'm not just at Stanford University for me. He reminded me, do you have any idea how many Wrights sacrificed and suffered for you to have this opportunity? And you're going to get C's with this, basically not on my watch. So that's the edited version of the folks that know my father are probably giggling right now, because it was a visceral tirade that included some profanities that are almost like theatrical. But I was 19 years old and 6'8" and 230 something pounds. I immediately shrunk to being that 11-year-old boy again. And I promised him, I promised my mother, and I promised myself that I would never disappoint them again. And that's one of my daily motivations, is not to embarrass them or the Wright family.
Well, you've certainly did an amazing, have done amazing things since then. After graduating Stanford, you made it to the NBA, and you played for the Dallas Mavericks, the Orlando Magic, the Atlanta Hawks. Talk about a little about those experiences and just being in the league. I mean, you prayed for it, you got there, and there you are, going up over Charles Smith in this one picture here that we have on our 76 Capital Leadership Series show. What was it like being out there with those guys?
It was surreal. It was beyond the wildest part of my dream. And so I tried out, was not drafted, tried out with the Atlanta Hawks. That Atlanta Hawks team, Wayne, legendary team. They couldn't get over the Celtics, but that team of Dominique, Doc Rivers, Moses Malone, Kevin Willis, that was a legendary, badass team. And so I come in and I moved to Atlanta. I trained the whole summer. I don't know what my body fat was. I don't know, how many reps I could do. I didn't know what my 40 time per se would have been, but I was in the best mental and physical shape of my life. And I thought to myself, this is my one shot. And if you've ever seen the Energizer Bunny or the Tasmanian Devil, when vet camp started, all the vets come in, they arrive, then they start loosening up, and then they get in shape during training camp. I was already treating every practice at vet camp like it was the 7th game of an NBA Finals. So Coach Bob Wise and others and the players were so nice, and I made the team. I made the team basically because I worked my ass off, and then it just so happened that another player had been injured. When he came back off of IR, I was released, and I joined Orlando. But I do remember that day, the opening night in '90, when basically I told my girlfriend at the time, all my family members, do not come to Atlanta, because I was still fearful that I was going to get cut, Wayne. And in the locker room during the preseason, my locker had been over kind of to the side, because, I'm one of 15, 16 guys trying out. So I always get to the gym or the locker early. The day of the game, I get there and I don't see my stuff in the locker. And I said, okay, I'm resigned to the fact that I didn't make the team, but I'm trying to muster up some sort of courage to tell myself that you gave it your best shot, and your best shot was, you won't have to live with that regret. At that same time, Joe O'Toole, who was a legendary trainer, comes in, walks in behind me, slaps me on the shoulder, said, "Hey, Wright, what are you doing? Your stuff's over there." And I was seated right next to Doc Rivers. So now, I go from basically almost crying because my dreams have been collapsed upon themselves to potentially tears of joy. And now players are starting to walk in. I said, well, I can't stand here as a bumbling mess because it wouldn't be cool. It would not, toxic masculinity would not allow me to reveal that I was vulnerable. I end up, calling everybody at home and telling them, because that game was going to go on the Turner, that Thursday night game. Everybody watched. I knew my father would be watching, and my father kept his love, I think, just intentionally outside of the reach so that we would always strive for more, that we always try to do more. I got in the game in this first quarter because Kevin Willis got 2 early fouls. I get in, I'm as cold as ice. I'm as nervous as I've ever been in my life, Wayne. And somebody goes baseline. I end up blocking a shot, get the rebound. I kick it to Doc Rivers, and then I run up the right side of the court as fast as anybody has ever run before. Doc fakes it to Dominique, and he leaves it for me. I go in, I have a basket and one, and I've been in the game maybe 9 seconds. So now at the free throw line, Wayne, and I never was a great free throw shooter, I'm thinking to myself, I was just watching the movie of my life, and now I'm still in it. And a couple dribbles, and my prayer is, Lord, let me hit something in the structure. Let me hit the 24-second clock, the backboard. I actually didn't think about making it. And it swishes, and it goes in. And so I've had a handful of we'll never be able to forget moments with Doc and Dominique and Shaq and the team in Dallas. I've been able to be on the court and see how truly gifted these athletes and these performers are. And I basically met my athletic mortality very quickly in the NBA because I had a short and non-illustrious career, but I want for nothing. God fulfilled and let me live out that dream that I had, or that prayer that I had when I was 11 years old after I'd met Julius Erving.
Wow, what a story! What a story. And, but then you continue to play professionally overseas for another 7 or 8 years, right? Yeah, I have got to be the only person in modern history who probably played in the NBA, but lost money compared to his graduating classmates at Stanford because as I was chasing the ball all over the world, people kept paying me hundreds of thousands of dollars to play basketball over the world, and I kept saying yes. My peers, my roommates from college had either finished and gone back to graduate school or started in Silicon Valley, and nobody on that's listening to this podcast, wonders about what happened in the late 80s, early 90s in Silicon Valley and getting in at early stage companies and the HPs and the Ciscos and the Microsoft, and these companies were hiring up Stanford kids, by the dozens. And so I'd said no to all those things to pursue this little ball. And if I had to do it all over again, I would. I got everything out of basketball that I was supposed to get. So Howard, real quick on that, in playing outside of the United States.
Yeah.
What was that like? I mean, do you have maybe one story that kind of really brings together what it was like being that American on these teams in countries, number of countries I see you played in, English is not the first language. Well, what was that experience like?
It was a true becoming inundated in a different culture, a different experience, in a different language. So languages came easy to me. I had spoken Spanish before I left, and so I lived in Spain. I did my interviews in Spanish. I learned Italian pretty quickly when I played in Italy because it's a derivative and it's still a Latin-based language. I had 1 year in France where it was a little bit harder. I understood the phraseology, but I could not get the timing down to become, necessarily fluent. Some of the moments would include, a team in Barcelona. So the year, the summer of the dream team is 92. The team that we played on or played for, that was our home gym where they played the 92 Barcelona Olympics. So the country and the city was still abuzz with the energy of basketball becoming what it is now, way back then. And as if you could ask the Dirk Nowitzkis and the Manu Ginobilis of the world, that's really when the brilliance of not only the American players, but the David Sterns of the world who had a vision of a global sport, unleashed it on a global level, of which, it will never be able to come down from the plateau that it is that kids, it may never be soccer because soccer is a religion, not even a sport. But I think about those early 90s, 92, 93, 94, Wayne, when living and playing in Europe, you also get a different education from just the typical media-fed bias that comes from the United States, and you become a citizen of the world. And I would never take those days back. I had some of the best times of my life running around Europe playing basketball.
That's amazing. It's amazing. We're with Howard Wright, the new CEO of C360 in our 76 Capital Leadership Series. He's sharing some amazing stories of his career, all, from growing up to the playing basketball professionally. And you just mentioned David Stern, our mutual friend and someone that we both, certainly miss a ton. I'd love to hear what your relationship was, with David was like, and how you guys connected. I know that, there's a picture on the screen right now on our video series of my interview with David when at our 76 Capital Leadership Series of a conference that we had. And I know that you had the similar kind of opportunity to interview David on the stage when you were at Intel. That's after Qualcomm, and you were at Qualcomm, I believe, for over 14 years. So maybe tell a little bit about your relationship with David and his impact in your life.
I would like to think that I'm one of a couple 100,000 of the mentees that he had in his glorious life. Obviously in and around the draft and the rookie symposium. So I'd met, Commissioner Stern a handful of times, and I've got to imagine he shook hands with how many, Wayne? 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 guys that could run and jump. I did not have a particularly close relationship with him in the early days. And then at one of the forums, the Foursquare event, Lazard puts on a Foursquare event in New York City. I reconnected with him about 8 years ago. And I had my name badge on, and it was representing Qualcomm. And he said, "Howard Wright, Stanford." And I thought to myself, how is this man who, was surrounded by some of the greatest players ever, remember one of the most obscure players ever, which was me. So we reconnected and we stayed in touch, and I would be able to sneak into town to New York to see him for lunch every once in a while. We've had dinner a handful of times. And during my time at Intel, we were in his office and he asked me about volumetric technology and some kind of the immersive media experience. So I explained to him what volumetric was, how voxel is a volumetric pixel, how you encode it and decode it, and then you deliver it either through the cloud or localized through some servers, then through the broadcasters. So after, I don't know, maybe a 2-minute explanation, he gave me the best insult, which is his backhanded way of a compliment ever. He said, "Wright, you're not nearly as stupid as I feared that you were." So we, as you know, knew him very well. That is the apex of compliments and insults that I've ever received in my life. And it was done in a loving way. I almost spit out my coffee because I was laughing so hard. And then he was nice enough to basically keynote in a fireside chat, more so an event that we had for Intel Capital, talking about immersive media and investing in VC community. We sit really at this unique intersection of media, technology, sports coming together right now. And I think this is the early days for what I'm calling the immersive media economy, Wayne.
Well, it is definitely a great segue into what you're doing now as CEO at C360. But before we get to that, just real quick, I'd love to just go back for 1 second. I know we skipped over a 14-year part of your career at Qualcomm. And I know you had a very special relationship with the founder and CEO of Qualcomm. And I think, just love to hear a couple of things that you did there, as well as that relationship, which I think is really special and is something that is, certainly Qualcomm being such an incredible technology company in your hometown, San Diego, it must have been really special, the time that you spent there.
Yeah, I got my master's degree from Qualcomm University. So authentic leadership is something that is talked about and written about all the time, Wayne. But to see it up close, day to day, almost perfected, from the early days with Irwin Jacobs, then to his son, Paul, who was our CEO chairman, the personal and professional debt of gratitude that I owe to Paul, I would never be able to repay. He and Peggy Johnson and Tony Thornley and Steve Altman and Dave Vigil and a few others, I think they recognized that I had some talent, didn't quite know how to polish the jewel that hopefully that I will become one day. But they were tough, they were fair, they required excellence, they required integrity with the customer, they required that I really grow up and be the senior executive and now eventually be the CEO that I am now. Those early days, I will never forget, because you have new technologies, you have new platforms, you have new licensable IP and defensible IP. And we were challenged with, go enunciate this, go evangelize this, go find the OEM partners, go find the infrastructure partners, go find the carrier partners to build these systems and subsystems that generate dollars and IP for Qualcomm. So I lived in a Camelot almost in those early days, and Paul, who was our CEO for the majority of the 10 years, I was there for 14. He was CEO for 10 of those. I was able to travel the world with them and see them at their best, at their worst, and at their best is if I don't steal something every single day, Wayne, in terms of the turn of a phrase or how I attack an email or how I try to work with a partner, from Irwin Jacobs, Paul Jacobs, Steve Altman, Peggy Johnson, Tony Thornley, or Dave Vigil, then I have not had a complete day in my life. So I'm honored to have that, those years at Qualcomm on my resume.
Absolutely incredible, really incredible. And so at this this juncture, I'd love to talk about where you've now kind of in the business world gotten to the point where now you're the CEO of C360, and I'd love for you to share with our listening audience and viewing audience, what is C360? What are you excited about? The future of sports and media and technology, and where things are going to really go in the future.
Excellent. So I'm a huge proponent, and I'm convinced, or at least I've convinced myself, Wayne, that we are in the early days of the immersive media economy. And I'll explain to you what that is. All of the linear broadcast rights for the major leagues NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, hockey, even our European partners, EPL, La Liga, are coming up in the next between 2 and 4 years. The traditional medium has been a 60-inch TV in your house, and you sit down with a beer and some potato chips, and you enjoy a game. What's happening right now is that the advances in technology and the radically different companies that are allowing different immersive streams, different interactivity. Wayne, you and I have had the privilege of being courtside or on the field or in the skybox of almost any cool venue, most iconic franchises in the world. That's how blessed I am. That's how much I have unmerited favor in my life. But now the idea is, how do you take someone who is on the other side of the world and from his or her device portal in to see a game and see a Jack Nicholson view at a Laker game? How do you give somebody the idea to see the highlight of what Tom Brady sees through Tom Brady's eyes a few moments after it happens? How do you transport somebody to the pitch in Barcelona and see what Messi sees as he is seeing it? This requires a ton of compute, a lot of horsepower, a lot of servers, some cloud functionality to operate and unleash all of these things. So here's what is happening in the ecosystem, in the technology ecosystem. 5G is becoming as real as we promised that it would be. The price of the device, price of storage, price of the cloud and the usage of the cloud is becoming closer to you. The edge is not just some distant big macro cell that's on the side of the freeway. The edge exists right here in my home office. So now you have the cloud is quicker, better, more functioning. The modem, as you concatenate a cellular modem and a Wi-Fi modem, you have basically almost unlimited capacity in your hand, in your pocket, in your purse. The leagues certainly want to monetize this, and they're choosing right now the most talented, the most gifted companies to weaponize this new ecosystem, which will be the immersive media economy. We at C360 believe that we have not only an inside track, we believe that we have a right to play in that space, that we're going to create value for our partners, and then we're going to capture value in this new immersive media economy. So let's go inside the play. Let's go to the edge of the play. Let's give folks an opportunity to experience the game that they've never experienced before in their life. And so that's why I was ready to do something else after the 5 years at Intel. And I believe fate intervened, and I was connected with C360 because revolutionary technology, world-class board. And I'm not saying that, that was before you even got here, Wayne. Now we have an embarrassment of riches of you joining the board. And then the most iconic customer base in the world. And if we can continue to delight our customers, we can, move up the stack in creating value for our customers.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, look, we are so excited, as I said earlier, at 76 Capital to be an investor in C360, coming into the company the same exact time as you coming into the company. As you said, the opportunity now it is now. It is the time. This is the time where all of these worlds are now coming together, and the opportunity to truly give a next generation experience and truly show the next thing to fans, is the time is now. And it is all these factors are coming together at once. It's this perfect storm. It's this incredible convergence that's going on within the world of sports.
It is. And now here is another, as we multi-thread this, here comes the FANGs, the Facebooks, the Amazons, and the Apples, and the Netflix, and others, and Googles that are coming in saying, wait a second, I have a platform that people experience over the top on the TV, on these screens that, big monitors that we're on right now, and then in their pockets every hour of every day. If we squint, we can see that this is going to be pretty big, and that the strategic partnerships and weaponizing the technology, the folks that do that the best, are going to win. And so again, I look at this through the lens of, let's look at 2030 and look backwards, let's look at 2025 and look backwards. Where do we have to breadcrumb ourselves to become a valuable, I'll redact that, to become an invaluable piece of this opportunity, and work alongside partners? We'll protect our IP. We won't infringe on anybody else's patents, but we won't let anybody else infringe on ours. And this is the opportunity that the commissioners and the heads of the major broadcasters are all leaning in, because they know it's inevitable. Now it's just I don't know, maybe a chess game going on right now with who can be 3 moves ahead, 4 moves ahead, maybe even 5 moves ahead, to move the pieces of this global economy together, as if there'll be lots of nickels and dimes and quarters to share out of every dollar in the supply chain.
Well, speaking for my partners and I at 76 Capital, we're excited to take this journey with you. Congratulations on becoming the new CEO of C360. We're excited about this. Really was a pleasure having you as a guest on our 76 Capital Leadership Series. We'll have to bring you on again when we talk about sort of the next things that happen at C360. Really excited about that. It's been a pleasure. It's really been a pleasure. Howard, thank you so much for joining our show.
No, pleasure has been all mine, Wayne. Appreciate it.
Well, don't forget to follow Howard Wright, the CEO of C360, on Twitter at C360CEO. That's the great place for you to follow Howard. And I'll tell you, he's a great person. He told his whole story and shared everything with us from his journey of growing up, and the stories about his grandfather, his dad, and his mom, and going to Stanford and playing professional basketball for over 10 years, 14 years at Qualcomm, number of years at Intel. Great stories there. Our great connection with the great and late David Stern, now with C360. Super excited about what the future lies for all of us. So, Howard, again, thank you for joining our 76 Capital Leadership Series. I'm your host, Wayne Kimmel. James Santor did a great job back at the studio. Follow James at James Santor. He's still doing a hell of a job saving LaSalle baseball. Keep making it happen on that end, James, and hope everybody has a great day.